Putney Theatre Company presents an adaptation of Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. Chapter 3.
The year since Meg and John's engagement was more settled than the last, but not without change.
Meg was far more happy with her lot, but still had her moments of jealousy. When attending the wedding of friends Sally Gardner and Ned Vaughan, she couldn't help contrasting their fine house and splendid outfits with her own, and secretly wishing she could have the same.
But somehow envy and discontent soon vanished when she thought of all the patient love and labor John had put into the little home awaiting her. And when they sat together in the twilight, talking over their small plans, the future always grew so beautiful and bright that she felt herself the richest, happiest girl in Christendom.
Jo never went back to Aunt March, for the old lady took such a fancy to Amy that she bribed her with the offer of drawing lessons from one of the best teachers going, and for the sake of this advantage, Amy would have served a far harder mistress.
Jo, meantime, devoted herself to literature and Beth, who remained delicate long after the fever was a thing of the past. Not an invalid exactly, but never again the rosy, healthy creature she had been, yet always hopeful, happy and serene, and busy with the quiet duty she loved. Everyone's friend, and an angel in the house, long before those who loved her most had learned to know it.
Laurie, having dutifully gone to college to please his grandfather, was now getting through it in the easiest possible manner to please himself. A universal favourite, thanks to money, manners, and much talent, and the kindest heart that ever got its owner into scrapes by trying to get other people out of them.
The little brown house Mr. Brooke had prepared for Meg's first home was nicknamed Dovecotes by Laurie. It was a tiny house with a little garden behind and a lawn about as big as a pocket handkerchief in the front. It was altogether charming, and the happy bride saw no fault from garret to cellar.
The day of the wedding saw the June roses over the porch rejoicing with all their hearts in the cloudless sunshine. Meg looked very like a rose herself, for all that was best and sweetest in her heart and soul seemed to bloom into her face that day. She made her wedding gown herself, sewing into it the tender hopes and innocent romances of a girlish heart.
Oh, hold on. I'm going to tie John's cravat for him.
Upon my word, here's a state of things. You oughtn't to be seen till the last minute, child.
I'm not a show auntie, and no one is coming to stare at me to criticize my dress or count the cost of my luncheon. I'm too happy to care what anyone says or thinks, and I'm going to have my little wedding just as I like it. John, dear, here's your handkerchief.
Mr. Brooke stooped for the unromantic tool and kissed his little bride behind the folding door with a look that made Aunt March whisk out her pocket handkerchief with a sudden dew in her sharp old eyes.
It's time, you two.
Are you ready to be Mrs. Brooke?
With all my heart.
There was no bridal procession, but a sudden silence fell upon the room as Mr. March and the young couple took their places under the green arch. Mother and sisters gathered close, as if loath to give Meg up.
Do you, John Brooke, take Margaret March to be your wife?
I do.
And do you, Margaret March, take John Brooke to be your husband?
I do.
Then with a full heart, I pronounce you man and wife.
There was no display of gifts, for they were already in the little house, nor was there an elaborate breakfast, but a plentiful lunch of cake and fruit dressed with flowers. Mr. Lawrence and Aunt March shrugged and smiled at one another when water, lemonade, and coffee were found to be the only sorts of drink. As the sun began to set, the guests started to depart, having enjoyed the simple day of dancing and merriment.
I wish you well, my dear. I heartily wish you well. But I think you'll be sorry for it. You've got a treasure, young man. See that you deserve it.
I think that was praise of some sort.
That is the prettiest wedding I've been to for an age, Ned. And I don't see why, for there wasn't a bit of style about it.
Sally, dear, I find it's best for you not to dwell on these things, lest you make your head ache.
Laurie, my lad, if you ever want to indulge in this sort of thing, get one of those little girls to help you. I shall be perfectly satisfied.
I'll do my best to gratify you, sir.
The little house was not far away, and the only bridal journey Meg had was the quiet walk with John from the old home to the new. The March family all gathered about her to say goodbye, as tenderly as if she had been going to make the grand tour. They stood watching her, with faces full of love and hope and tender pride as she walked away, leaning on her husband's arm, with her hands full of flowers and the June sunshine brightening her happy face. And so Meg's married life began. All this time Jo had been writing away with all her heart and soul. She did not think herself a genius by any means, but when the writing fit came on, she gave herself up to it with entire abandon, and led a blissful life, unconscious of want, care, or bad weather, while she sat safe and happy in an imaginary world, full of friends almost as real and dear to her as any in the flesh.
Jo, you have a letter!
Has anyone seen my umbrella?
Have you checked the rack?
Of course I've checked the rack.
Then what's this?
Oh.
What is it?
I entered a competition and I've won.
Congratulations!
What did you win?
$100.
Can we read it?
I'd love to read it.
When the paper that carried her award-winning story arrived, Jo brought a copy straight to her parents to read.
Well, the language was good, the romance fresh and hearty, and the tragedy quite thrilling. But you can do better than this, Jo. Aim at the highest and never mind the money.
I think the money is the best part of it. What will you do with such a fortune?
Send Beth and Mother to the seaside for a month or two.
Your father doesn't mean you have to spend your money on us, dear.
I want to. It'll help Beth get well, and you could do with a holiday.
Can I go as well?
No.
Are you sure? I only meant it as something to think about for next time.
Beth didn't come home as plump and rosy as could be desired, but she was much better, while Mrs. March declared she felt 10 years younger. So Jo was satisfied with the investment of her prize money, and fell to work with a cheery spirit, bent on earning more of those delightful cheques. She did earn several that year. The Duke's daughter paid the butcher's bill, a phantom hand put down a new carpet, and the curse of the Coventrys proved the blessing of the Marches in the way of groceries and gowns.
The thing now is what to do with my novel.
What do you mean?
I've sent it to publishers, but only received back some notes and no interest, so I must either pay for printing it myself or chop it up to suit purchasers and get what I can for it.
Don't spoil your book, my girl, for there is more in it than you know, and the idea is well worked out. Let it wait and ripen.
I think it would be better to send a version to purchasers. Criticism is the best test of such work. We are too partial, but the praise and blame of outsiders will prove useful, even if she gets but little money.
Yes, that's just it. I've been fussing over the thing so long, I really don't know whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. It will be a great help to have cool, impartial persons take a look at it and tell me what they think of it.
I wouldn't leave a word out of it. You'll spoil it if you do.
But this publisher note says, leave out the explanations, make it brief and dramatic, and let the characters tell the story.
Do as he tells you. He knows what will sell and we don't. Make a good, popular book and get as much money as you can. By and by, when you've got a good name, you can afford to digress and have philosophical and metaphysical people in your novels.
Well, if my people are philosophical and metaphysical, it isn't my fault, for I know nothing about such things, except what I hear Father say sometimes. If I've got some of his wise ideas jumbled up with my romance, so much the better for me. Now, Beth, what do you say?
I should so like to see it printed soon.
So the young authoress laid her firstborn on their table, and chopped it up as ruthlessly as any ogre. In the hope of pleasing everyone, she took everyone's advice, like the old man and his donkey in the fable, suited nobody. Well, it was printed, and she got $300 for it, likewise plenty of praise and blame, both so much greater than she expected that she was thrown into a state of bewilderment from which it took her some time to recover.
You said, Mother, that criticism would help me, but How can it when it's so contradictory that I don't know whether I've written a promising book or broken all the 10 Commandments?
This man says an exquisite book full of truth, beauty, and earnestness.
Here's one. All is sweet, pure, and healthy.
Fine, but hear this one. The theory of the book is bad, full of morbid fancies, spiritualistic ideas, and unnatural characters. Now, as I had no theory of any kind, don't believe in spiritualism, and copied my characters from life, I don't see how this critic can be right.
Another says it's one of the best American novels that has appeared for years.
Ha! I know better than that. Some make fun of it, some overpraise, and nearly all insist that I had a deep theory to expound, when I only wrote it for the pleasure and the money. I wish I'd printed the whole or not at all, for I do so hate to be misjudged.
But this hard time did her good, and when the first soreness was over, she could laugh at her poor little book, yet believe in it still, and feel herself the wiser and stronger for the buffeting she had received.
Meg, look at this beautiful silk.
Oh, isn't it lovely?
You should buy it.
Excuse me, how much is this violet silk?
A splendid choice, ma'am. It is currently on offer at $50 for 6 yards.
Meg, for that price it would be ridiculous not to get it.
$50? I don't think
I'll lend you $50. It would be a pleasure to see you in a new gown instead of that black one you wear to every party.
Oh, don't be silly, Sally.
Shall I take this to the till for you, ma'am?
I would.
I'll take it.
Excellent. Now where to have tea?
Sally went on about their day as if the silk were a thing of no consequence, whereas Meg had returned home with her parcel, feeling as if she had stolen something, and the police were after her. She put the silk away, but it haunted her, not delightfully as a new dress should, but dreadfully like the ghost of a folly that was not easily laid. When John got out the accounts that night, Meg's heart sank, and for the first time in her married life, she was afraid of her husband.
Well, we're in a fine place. No scrimping to be done this month.
You haven't seen my private expense book yet.
I can't imagine it will be anything too bad.
John, dear, I'm ashamed to show you my book, for I've really been dreadfully extravagant lately. I go about so much. I must have things, you know, and Sally advised my getting it, so I did, and my New Year's money will partly pay for it, but I was sorry after I'd done it, for I knew you'd think it was wrong of me.
Don't go and hide. I'm rather proud of my gorgeous wife, and don't mind if she does pay $8 or $9 for her decorations, although, of course, I don't think you need any extra help.
It's worse than decorations. It's a silk dress.
Well, dear, what is the damage?
$50.
Oh. Well, I don't know that 50 is much for a dress with all the work that goes into finishing it off.
That's just the fabric.
Just the...
I know you're angry, John, but I can't help it. I don't mean to waste your money, and I didn't think that those little things would count up so. I can't resist them when I see Sally buying all she wants and pitying me because I don't. I try to be contented, but it is hard, and I'm tired of being poor.
I was afraid of this. I do my best, Meg.
Oh, John, my dear, kind, hard-working boy.
Meg knew that
I
she
didn't
had
mean
done
it.
and said a thing which
It was
would
so
not be
untrue and
forgotten
ungrateful.
soon,
How could I say it?
although he might
I know,
never allude
I
to it
know.
again. She had promised to love him, for better or worse, than she, his wife, had reproached him with his poverty, after spending his earnings recklessly. A week of remorse nearly made Meg sick, and the discovery that John had cancelled the order for his new greatcoat reduced her to a state of despair.
Sally, would you do me a favour?
Does it involve going outside? Because I simply can't today.
Would you buy that violet silk from me? I can't afford it and shouldn't have brought it in the first place.
Oh, Meg, I would have bought it for you.
I know, but it wouldn't feel the same.
Of course I'll buy it from you. Let me get my purse.
Then Meg ordered the greatcoat, and when John arrived she put it on and asked him how he liked her new silk gown. One can imagine what answer he made, how he received his present, and what a blissful state of things ensued. So the year rolled round, and at midsummer there came to Meg a new experience, the deepest and tenderest of her young life.
How is the little mama? Where is everybody? Why didn't you tell me before I came home?
She's as happy as a queen, the dear. Now you go into the parlor and I'll send them down to you.
Shut your eyes and hold out your arms.
No, thank you. I'd rather not. I shall drop it or smash it as sure as fate.
I forgot you were chicken.
How dare you? You must be responsible for damages.
Obeying orders, Laurie heroically shut his eyes while something was put into his arms. A peal of laughter from the March family caused him to open them the next minute, to find himself invested with 2 babies instead of 1.
Twins! By Jupiter! Oh, take him quick, somebody. I'm gonna laugh and I shall drop him.
I couldn't tell you, for I set my heart on surprising you, and I flatter myself I've done it.
Boys? Girls?
Boy and girl. Aren't they beauties?
Most remarkable children I ever saw. Which is which?
I've put a blue ribbon on the boy and a pink on the girl. French fashion, so you can always tell.
Now, what are we thinking for names?
He's to be named John Lawrence.
And the girl Margaret, after mother and grandmother.
We shall call her Daisy so as not to have 2 Megs. And I suppose the Manny will be Jack, unless we find a better name.
Name him Demi-John, and call him Demi for short.
Daisy and Demi. Just the thing.
Although Amy and Joe certainly got on better these days, the Aunt March rift was the most sore point in their relationship. Joe felt she had put in the hard work, softening up Aunt March just for Amy to sweep in and become her favourite.
Now, Joe dear, Florence Carroll is a very elegant young lady, so I want you to put on your best deportment. Don't make any of your abrupt remarks or do anything odd, will you? Just be calm, cool, and quiet. That's safe and ladylike, and you can easily do it for 15 minutes.
Let me see. Calm, cool, and quiet. Yes, I think I can promise that. I've played the part of a prim young lady on the stage, and I'll try it off. My powers are great, as you shall see.
Amy looked relieved, but naughty Joe took her at her word. For during the first call, she sat with every limb gracefully composed, every fold correctly draped, calm as a summer sea, cool as a snowbank, and as silent as the Sphinx.
Miss March, I've read your charming novel. I very much enjoyed it.
Say something.
It's a pleasure to meet you, having so enjoyed your work.
I'm sure.
Amy positively dragged her sister from the room, hearing Florence comment to Aunt March as they left.
What a hardy creature that oldest Miss March is.
How could you mistake me so? I merely meant you to be properly dignified and composed, and you made yourself a perfect stock and stone. Go back in there and try and have an acceptable conversation.
I'm sorry, Miss Carroll. You could find nothing better to read. I write that rubbish because it sells and ordinary people like it.
Oh.
Ignore her. She enjoys being rude.
Do you speak French, Amy?
Pretty well, thanks to Aunt March.
How are you about languages?
Don't know a word. I'm very stupid about studying anything. Can't bear French. It's such a slippery, silly sort of a language.
The tea was as awkward as the conversation had been. Joe saying practically the opposite of everything either Florence or Aunt March said, with Amy trying desperately to save the air of conviviality. But in departing, Joe and Amy couldn't be more different. Joe shook hands in a gentlemanly manner, but Amy kissed both women, and the girls departed, leaving behind them the impression of shadow and sunshine.
Did that help you make your decision, Mrs. March?
Well, they certainly are 2 very different personalities.
Indeed. It seems clear that there is a right one and a wrong one.
A week later, a letter came from Aunt March, and Mrs. March's face was illuminated to such a degree when she read it that Joe and Beth, who were with her, demanded what the glad tidings were.
Aunt March is going abroad next month and wants...
Me to go with her?
No, dear, it's not you. It's Amy.
Oh, Mother. She's too young. It's my turn first. I've wanted it so long. It would do me so much good and be so altogether splendid. I must go.
I'm afraid it's impossible, Joe. Anne says Amy decidedly, and it is not for us to dictate when she offers such a favour.
It's always so. Amy has all the fun and I have all the work. It isn't fair. Oh, it isn't fair.
I'm afraid it's partly your own fault, dear. Listen, she writes as if quoting something you had said. I planned at first to ask Joe, but as she hates French, I think I won't venture to invite her. Amy will make a good companion for Florence and receive gratefully any help the trip may give her.
Oh, my tongue. My abominable tongue. Why can't I learn to keep quiet?
I wish you could have gone, but there is no hope of it this time, so try to bear it cheerfully and don't sadden Amy's pleasure by reproaches or regrets.
I'll take a leaf out of her book and try not only to seem glad, but to be so and not grudge her 1 minute of happiness. But it won't be easy.
Joe, dear, I'm very selfish, but I couldn't spare you, and I'm glad you're not going quite yet.
By the time Amy came in, Joe was able to take part in the family jubilation. Not quite as heartily as usual, perhaps, but without repinings at Amy's good fortune. The young lady herself received the news as tidings of great joy, went about in a solemn sort of rapture, and began to sort her colours and pack her pencils that evening, leaving such trifles as clothes, money, and passports to those less absorbed in the visions of art than herself.
It isn't a mere pleasure trip to me, girls. It will decide my career, for if I have any genius, I shall find it out in Rome, and will do something to prove it.
Suppose you haven't?
Then I shall come home and teach drawing for my living.
No, you won't. You hate hard work, and you'll marry some rich man and come home to sit in the lap of luxury all your days.
Your predictions sometimes come to pass, but I don't believe that one will. I'm sure I wish it would, for if I can't be an artist myself, I should like to be able to help those who can.
If you wish it, you'll have it, for your wishes are always granted. Mine never.
Joe bore up very well till the last flutter of Amy's blue ribbon vanished, when she retired to the garret, and cried till she couldn't cry any more. Amy likewise bore up stoutly till the steamer sailed. Then, just as the gangway was about to be withdrawn, it suddenly came over her that a whole ocean was soon to roll between her and those who loved her best.
Laurie, take care of them for me, and if anything should happen...
If anything happens, I'll come and find you.
Of course it would be raining the moment we set foot in London.
Don't be ungrateful. I would have brought Joe if I'd wanted to hear snippy comments all through Europe. You girls go and have tea while I rest from this hateful journey.
Look at this hotel. Florence, you should pinch me.
Why would I do that?
Miss Amy March.
Fred Vaughn? Why, I hardly recognize you. You look so grown up.
Well, I guess that's because I am grown up.
Oh, how frightfully rude of me. Mr. Vaughn, this is my cousin, Miss Carroll.
How do you do?
Charmed. Do you know each other well?
Fred's brother is married to a friend of my sister.
And of course that day at the beach. Do you remember?
Of course. Where you played Joe at croquet.
Oh, yes. Now, do send my regards to that stickler for the rules.
I will.
Would you care to join us for tea, Mr. Vaughan?
Couldn't think of anything nicer, but I'm afraid I'm on my way to see Mother and I couldn't keep her waiting. Perhaps I could call on you, Miss March, while you're in town.
I would like that very much.
Apparently, Amy saw Fred Vaughn in London.
Oh, really?
He took her to the theatre.
Did he?
That's what she said in her letter.
Well.
That should be me in London.
You don't even like Fred Vaughn.
At the theatre, Laurie. It should be me at the theatre. Who gives two hoots about Fred Vaughn?
Well, Amy does, apparently.
Amy's got to Paris.
Mes sincères félicitations.
What does she say?
That she had a wonderful time with the Vaughns in London and they are hoping to meet up again with them in Rome, which she's looking forward to, especially to seeing Fred.
I don't even know why she'd want to spend time with Fred Vaughan. When I met him, he was a perfect bore.
Maybe he's grown out of being a bore.
She says they are sightseeing from morning till night, stopping for nice lunches in the gay cafes and meeting with all sorts of droll adventures.
Has she been to the Louvre yet?
Yes, and says she could have spent the whole trip there, but...
But what, dear?
Fred Vaughan surprised them by arriving in Paris to see them.
Oh.
She says, Fred is very entertaining.
Fred is very entertaining and is altogether the most agreeable young man I ever knew, except Laurie, whose manners are more charming. I wish Fred was taller, for I don't fancy short men. However, the Vaughans are very rich and come of an excellent family, so I won't find fault with their shortness, as I am even shorter. Adieu. I embrace you tenderly. Votre ami.
Well, that is certainly something.
Yes.
Looks like it's just you and me left, Beth.
I can't think why I let you drag me here.
You couldn't leave Hindelburg without a boat trip on the Seine, Aunt March.
I could have, and indeed almost certainly should have.
Fred is looking for you, Amy.
New boys should be looking for you, Amy March. This trip is not for you to be gallivanting around.
I'm not gallivanting, Aunt March.
No one was talking to you, Florence. Well?
Well, what?
Go and find out what the young man wants.
But you said...
Mr. Vaughan will be waiting.
Fred? Florence said you were looking for me.
I've had a letter from home. Mother has fallen ill, so I'm catching the first train and making my way back to London.
Oh, Fred, I'm so sorry. Please send your mother my love. We will all miss you, but you must be with your family.
But will you miss me, Amy?
Will I?
I shall soon come back. You won't forget me, will you, Amy?
Of course not.
I will write as soon as I can.
Well, what did he say?
Just that he has to leave. His mother is sick.
Oh, I thought he was going to ask you to marry him.
Why on earth would he do that?
Well, you're very pretty, and he obviously cares for you. He is handsome, young, clever enough, and very rich. You couldn't find a better husband.
I suppose not.
You would say yes, wouldn't you, if he asked you?
I suppose. One of us must marry well. Meg didn't, Joe won't, Beth can't yet, so I shall.
That doesn't sound very romantic.
It wasn't meant to. Anyway, I haven't been asked yet, have I?
You asked me the other day what my wishes were. I'll tell you one of them, Marmee. I want to go away somewhere this winter for a change.
Why, Joe?
I want something new. I feel restless and anxious to be seeing, doing, and learning more than I am. I brood too much over my own small affairs, and I need stirring up. So if I can be spared this winter, I'd like to hop a little way and try my wings.
And where will you hop?
New York. I had a bright idea yesterday, and this is it. You know Mrs. Kirk wrote to you for some respectable young person to teach her children and sew? It's rather hard to find just the thing, but I think I should suit it if I tried.
My dear, go out to service in that great boarding house?
It's not exactly going out to service, for Mrs. Kirk is your friend, the kindest soul that ever lived, and would make things pleasant for me, I know. It's honest work, and I'm not ashamed of it.
Nor I, but you're writing.
All the better for the change. I shall see and hear new things, get new ideas, and even if I haven't much time there, I shall bring home quantities of material for my rubbish.
The plan was talked over in a family council and agreed upon, for Mrs. Kirk gladly accepted Joe and promised to make a pleasant home for her. When all was settled, with fear and trembling she told Laurie, but to her surprise, he took it very quietly.
You will write, won't you?
I'll be back before you have time to miss me.
I'll miss you, Joe.
Not as much as I'll miss you.
Goodbye, my love.
Goodbye, and thank you. Laurie, you will look after them all while I'm away, won't you?
What will I do without my Joe?
There she is.
Hello, Mrs. Kirk. Thank you so much for...
Oh, nonsense. Should be me thanking you. Coming to a big city like this all on your own to help me with the girls?
It's so exciting to be here.
Well, I'm not sure about exciting, but like the saying goes, a change is as good as a rest.
I hope so.
Now, my dear, make yourself at home. My rooms are always open to you, and your own shall be as comfortable as I can make it. There are some pleasant people in the house if you feel sociable, and your evenings are always free. Come to me if anything goes wrong, and be as happy as you can. There's the tea bell. I must run.
Jo was left in the hallway of the big house with not a clue where her rooms were or what she was expected to do.
Excuse me, you look a little lost. Can I be of any assistance?
Oh, Mrs. Kirk had to get tea and she left before I could ask where my room was.
You must be the new governess. Let me take your bag to your room for you. I am Professor Bear at your service.
Thank you so much. Do you live here as well?
I do. I got my doctorate in Berlin, but I wish to study more in this great city. Like you, I teach little ones in order to be able to study more.
It's less studying in my case and more inventing. I'm a writer, you see.
How marvellous. I would be honoured to read your work.
Oh, it's nothing very impressive.
Surely your readers are to be the judge of that. Here we are. I shall leave you to settle yourself. If you need a friend around the city, please do let me be of assistance again.
Jo did feel the benefit of living in a big, bright city. She loved the two little girls she cared for greatly, and it felt like no great hardship to be their governess. Along with Professor Bear, Jo explored the city, seeing plays, meeting other writers, and having all sorts of discussions with fellow academics. The months rolled on, and when wreaths and decorated trees were being seen all around New York, and the streets were full of Christmas shoppers, Jo felt more alone than she had in all the previous months. But the friendly and kind Mrs. Kirk did her best to make Jo's first Christmas away from home a pleasant one.
I believe there's a present under the tree for you, Jo.
Oh, no, the girls gave me their presents on Christmas Eve.
We'll check just in case.
Oh, look.
Who could it be from?
From your faithful friend.
The professor left it there.
How kind of him. I haven't got him anything.
I don't imagine he'll mind. What did he get you?
A collection of Shakespeare.
Oh, well, it's a thought that counts. He's in the parlor should you want to thank him.
Jo peered in at the parlor door and saw the professor peering over some papers. He stood when he saw her and blushed when he spied the book in her hands.
Thank you so much for my gift.
You say often you wish for a library. Here, I give you one. For between these covers is many books in one. Read him well, and he will help you much. For the study of character in this book will help you to read it in the world and paint it with your pen.
My family sent me some new books for Christmas as well, and now, along with your marvellous edition, I really do have the most wonderful collection. Thank you, Mr. Bear.
You are most welcome, Miss March.
Jo still found time for literary labours. She took to writing sensation stories, for in those dark ages even all-perfect America read rubbish. She told no one, but concocted a thrilling tale and boldly carried it herself to Mr. Dashwood, editor of the Weekly Volcano. She tried to persuade herself that she was neither excited nor nervous as she bravely climbed 2 pairs of dark and dirty stairs to find herself in a disorderly room full of cigar smoke.
Excuse me, I was looking for the Weekly Volcano office. I wish to see Mr. Dashwood.
Well, you have found it and him.
I have a story. It's my friend's. She wished me to bring it up to you.
Pass it over. Someone will read it and she'll have an answer by next week.
Excuse me, sir, but she wishes you to read it, not someone.
Does she?
If you please, and I am happy to wait while you do so. I would prefer not to leave without either the manuscript or an answer.
You'll be waiting a while.
I don't mind.
So Jo took up a chair next to Mr. Dashwood's desk, which greatly surprised the gentleman, but had the desired effect, as he put aside his other jobs and set about to reading the story of Jo March's friend.
So this is your friend's story?
She is painfully shy in business matters. She wished me to come and see what you thought of it.
Not a first attempt, I take it.
No, sir. She has had some experience, and got a prize for a tale in the Blarney Stone Banner.
Oh, did she? Well, you can tell your friend we'll take this, if you don't object to a few alterations. It's too long, but omitting the passages I've marked will make it just the right length.
But, sir, you've removed all the moments of reflection. I thought every story should have some sort of a moral, so I took care to have a few of my sinners repent.
People want to be amused, not preached at, you know. Morals don't sell nowadays.
You think it would do with these alterations, then?
Yes, it's a new plot and pretty well worked up. Language good and so on.
What do you... That is, what compensation?
Oh, yes, well, we give from 25 to 30 for things of this sort. Pay when it comes out.
Very well. You can have it. Shall I tell my friend you will take another if she has one better than this?
Well, we'll look at it. Can't promise to take it. Tell her to make it short and spicy, and never mind the moral. What name would your friend like to put on it?
None at all, if you please. She doesn't wish her name to appear, and has no nom de plume.
Just as she likes, of course. The tale will be out next week. Will you call for the money, or shall I send it?
I'll call. Good morning, sir.
Poor and proud, as usual. But she'll do.
Joe followed Mr. Dashwood's advice and started on a thrilling tale with absolutely no morals at all. It did not sit well with her, this writing, for it was nothing but trash, but the public loved it, and it sold well. Mr. Dashwood, aware that there was no friend and that Joe didn't want to put her name to the story, kept her secret for her. After writing a fair few of these spirited stories, Joe came into Mrs. Kirk's parlour to find Mr. Bear putting a copy of the Weekly Volcano onto the fire.
Ah, Miss March, I found this in one of my pupils' possession. Do you know of the publication?
I'm aware of it, yes. It specializes in sensation stories, doesn't it?
Is that what they are called?
You don't approve of them, I take it.
I do not think that young men should read such things. They are made pleasant to some, but I would rather give my boys gunpowder to play with than this bad trash.
All may not be bad, only silly, you know, and if there is a demand for it, I don't see any harm in supplying it. Many very respectable people make an honest living writing them.
There is a demand for guns, but I think you and I do not care to sell them. If people knew what harm they did, they would not fear that the living was honest.
Joe thought what a blaze her pile of papers upstairs would make, and her hard-earned money lay rather heavily on her conscience at that minute, though she thought consolingly to herself,
Mine are not like that. They are only silly, never bad, so I won't be worried.
As soon as she went to her room, she got out her papers and carefully reread every one of her stories. Being a little short-sighted, Mr. Bear sometimes used eyeglasses. Now she seemed to have on the professor's mental or moral spectacles also, for the faults of these poor stories glared at her dreadfully and filled her with dismay.
They are trash, and will soon be worse trash if I go on, for each is more sensational than the last. I can't read this stuff in sober earnest without being horribly ashamed of it, and what should I do if they were seen at home or Mr. Bear got hold of them?
Joe turned hot at the bare idea and stuffed the whole bundle into her stove, nearly setting the chimney afire with the blaze. But when nothing remained of all her 3 months' work except a heap of ashes and the money in her lap, Joe looked sober as she sat on the floor, wondering what she ought to do about her wages.
If I use them to help others, like mother and father, that should straighten the whole situation out. I can't feel bad about it then.
And although she no longer felt guilty about her sensational stories, she had lost any drive to keep writing. Mr. Bear was the first to notice this loss, when he observed that her usually ink-stained hands were now almost spotless. It was a pleasant winter, and a long one, for she did not leave Mrs. Kirk's till June. Everyone seemed sorry when the time came. The children were inconsolable, and Mr. Bear's hair stuck straight up all over his head, for he always rumpled it wildly when disturbed in mind.
I don't think I've ever been this sad to see a governess leave.
I'm sure your next one will be much better than I was.
But I'm not sure if I should like her half as much as I do you. Are you sure you have to leave?
I'm afraid so.
Well, I shall miss you awfully. Do write often, as I shall want to hear all about what you get up to. Mr. Bear has offered to walk you to the station. Goodbye, dear Joe.
Goodbye, Mrs. Kirk, and thank you.
Going home? Ah, you are happy that you have a home to go to.
Now, sir, you won't forget to come and see us if you ever travel our way, will you? I'll never forgive you if you do, for I want them all to know my friend.
Do you? Shall I come?
Yes, come next month. Laurie graduates then, and you'd enjoy commencement as something new.
That is your best friend of whom you speak.
Yes, my boy Teddy. I'm very proud of him and should like you to see him.
Jo looked up then, quite unconscious of anything but her own pleasure in the prospect of showing them to one another. Something in Mr. Bear's face suddenly recalled the fact that she might find Laurie more than a best friend, and simply because she particularly wished not to look as if anything was the matter, she involuntarily began to blush, and the more she tried not to, the redder she grew.
I fear I should not make the time for that, but I wish the friend much success and you all happiness. God bless you.
And with that, he shook her hands warmly and gave her a bunch of violets. He left her on the train platform. As he looked away without looking back, he thought that he had, maybe, become too attached to Miss Jo March.
Well, the winter's gone, and I've written no books, earned no fortune, but I've made a friend worth having, and I'll try and keep him all my life.
Jo was happy to be back home. Nothing seemed to have changed that winter except the twins had grown. That, and the fact that Laurie seemed different. Their friendship was not as easy and silly as it had once been. Jo was uncomfortable at this seemingly sudden change in her Teddy. She thought she knew what he was thinking, but no, that would be ridiculous. One evening, after helping Meg put the twins to bed, Laurie and Jo walked from Dovecotes. She always used to take his arm on these occasions. Now she did not. Laurie began to walk more slowly. Jo looked back to find him looking at her with a somber expression.
No, Teddy, please don't.
I will. And you must hear me. It's no use, Jo. We've got to have it out, and the sooner the better for both of us.
Say what you like then, I'll listen.
I've loved you ever since I've known you, Jo. I couldn't help it. You've been so good to me. I've tried to show it, but you wouldn't let me, and now I'm going to make you hear and give me an answer, for I can't go on so any longer.
I wanted to save you this. I thought you'd understand.
I know you did, but girls are so queer, you never know what they mean. They say no when they mean yes, and drive a man out of his wits just for the fun of it.
I don't. I never wanted to make you care for me so.
I worked hard to please you, and I gave up billiards and everything you didn't like, and waited and never complained, for I hoped you'd love me, though I'm not half good enough.
You are. You're a great deal too good for me, and I'm so grateful to you and so proud and so fond of you. I don't know why I can't love you as you want me to, but I can't change the feeling, and it would be a lie to say I do when I don't.
Really? Truly, Jo?
Oh, Teddy, I'm sorry. I'm so desperately sorry. You know it's impossible for people to make themselves love other people if they don't.
They do sometimes.
I don't believe that's the right sort of love, and I'd rather not try it.
Oh, Jo, can't you?
Teddy, dear, I wish I could.
That's all right.
Then Laurie went away without another word. But it wasn't all right. For while the curly head lay on her arm a minute after her hard answer, she felt as if she had stabbed her dearest friend. And when he left her, without a look behind him, she knew that the boy Laurie never would come again.
Chapter 3 of Little Women was adapted and directed by Zoe Thomas-Webb, edited by Aidan Kershaw, with music composed by Dominic Pollard and Scott Killick. For this chapter, the cast included Kirsty Harrison as Jo, Paula Mount as Meg, Alex O'Donnell as Amy, Lexi Milliken as Beth, Sarah Perkins as Marmee, Tom Thornton as Mr. March, Wolf Walsworth as Laurie, Nick Mouton as Mr. Lawrence, Tom Osborne as Ned Vaughan, Jonathan Grant as Mr. Brooke, Adam Mulder as Fred Vaughan, Lizzie Iredale as Sally Gardner, Penny Wetherall as Aunt March, Josie Murphy-Harding as Florence, Ali Stadden as Estelle, Kimberly Van Leeuwen-Muller as Mrs. Kirk, Ben Clare as Professor Bear, Jim Dixon as Mr. Dashwood, and Catherine Goddard as Louisa.